Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck of the Luna station, staring at Earth below. The blue planet looked peaceful from here, but she knew that peace would not last much longer. In her hand, she held a small data pad that displayed a message that had arrived 3 hours ago. The message was simple and terrible: surrender or die. The Vraxian Empire had given humanity 7 days to make a choice. 7 days to decide if the human race would bow down and become servants, or if they would fight and probably lose everything. Sarah had been in the military for 25 years, and she had never felt fear like this before. The Vraxians were not just another enemy. They were the most powerful force in the entire galaxy. Behind her, footsteps echoed on the metal floor. She turned to see General Marcus Rodriguez approaching. His face looked tired and old, though he was only 53. The last few weeks had aged all of them. The council finished their vote, Marcus said quietly. His voice carried the weight of bad news. And? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. They refused to help us. 37 civilizations voted against intervention. Only 2 voted in our favor. The rest abstained. Marcus walked to the window and stood beside her. They said humanity is too young, too primitive. They said getting involved would set a bad precedent. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger would not help them now. So we stand alone. We stand alone, Marcus confirmed. Humanity had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago. It happened when the Meridian Collective made first contact in 2797. The aliens had been friendly, curious about the young species that had just discovered faster-than-light travel. They welcomed humans to the galaxy and offered to share knowledge and technology. For 50 years, humanity had learned everything they could. They studied alien science, alien engineering, alien weapons. They built new ships and new stations. They thought they were becoming strong. But now they understood the truth. 50 years was nothing to species that had existed for thousands of years. To the galaxy, humans were like children playing with toys they did not fully understand. The Vraxian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered over 200 civilizations. Their military had never lost a major battle. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything humanity had ever built. And now they wanted Earth. The reason was simple. Earth sat at a strategic location, a crossroads between 3 major galactic sectors. Whoever controlled Earth could control trade and military movement throughout this entire region. The Vraxians had asked nicely at first, offering humanity a place in their empire as a protected world. When humanity refused, the Vraxians had shown their true nature. How many ships do they have? Sarah asked. 500 warships in the fleet that's coming here, Marcus answered. Supreme Commander Thalrex himself is leading them. He's the one who crushed the Teloni Confederacy 20 years ago. 12 billion dead in 6 months. Sarah closed her eyes. 500 ships. Humanity had only 47 combat vessels that could actually fight in deep space. It was not even close to a fair fight. What about the Indomitable? She asked. Marcus's expression changed slightly. The Indomitable was humanity's secret weapon, though calling it that felt like a joke. It was Earth's first and only Dreadnought-class vessel. The ship had taken 15 years to build and had cost more than all of humanity's other warships combined. She's ready, Marcus said. The crew finished final tests yesterday. All systems are operational. And the weapon? The Mayhem device is installed and tested. Dr. Okonkwo says it will work, but we'll only get 1 shot. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. Sarah nodded slowly. The magnetically accelerated hypervelocity electromagnetic munition was the largest railgun ever built by humans. It could fire a solid tungsten rod at 5% the speed of light. The impact force would be incredible, but the weapon took enormous power to charge and could not fire quickly. Against 500 ships, 1 or 2 shots would not be enough. They want you to command the defense fleet, Marcus said. The Security Council voted unanimously. You're being promoted to Fleet Admiral effective immediately. Sarah had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a weight settling on her shoulders. When do they arrive?
6 days, 14 hours.
They're not trying to hide their approach. Long-range sensors picked them up at the edge of the system. Arrogant, Sarah muttered. They have reason to be, Marcus replied. Every species they've faced has surrendered or been destroyed. They have no reason to think we'll be different. Sarah turned away from the window and looked at Marcus directly. I need complete tactical control. No politicians giving orders during battle. No committees making decisions. If I'm going to do this, I do it my way. Marcus smiled slightly. Already done. The president signed the order this morning. You have full authority over all military assets in the Sol system. Then we have work to do, Sarah said. Over the next 6 days, Sarah barely slept. She met with every ship captain in the defense fleet. She reviewed battle plans with her tactical officers. She studied every piece of data humanity had about Vraxian military doctrine and technology. And she spent hours aboard the Indomitable, walking through its corridors and meeting its crew. The Indomitable was different from other ships in the fleet. Most human vessels tried to copy alien designs using clean energy weapons and elegant engineering, but the Indomitable was built using human philosophy. The ship was massive and ugly, covered in thick armor plating that could regenerate using 3D printing technology. It had redundant systems for everything, backup power cores and old-fashioned technology mixed with the new. Other species laughed at human engineering. They said humans were too attached to their primitive ways. Why use chemical rockets when you had gravitic drives? Why use kinetic weapons when you had plasma cannons? Why build ships with so many redundant systems when efficient design was better? But Sarah understood something the aliens did not. Humans had learned to build things on a dangerous planet where everything could go wrong. They learned to prepare for failure. They learned that sometimes the old ways worked better than the new ways. And they learned that survival mattered more than elegance. Dr. James Okonkwo was waiting for her in the Indomitable's main laboratory. He was a tall man from Nigeria with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had designed most of the ship's experimental systems. "Admiral," he greeted her. "Come to check on the weapon again?" "I need to understand it completely," Sarah said. "If we're betting everything on this, I need to know it will work." James nodded and led her to a large display showing technical diagrams. "The principle is simple. We accelerate a tungsten rod using electromagnetic force. The rod weighs 50 tons and travels at 15,000 kilometers per second. The kinetic energy on impact equals approximately 50 megatons." "But that's not the real weapon, is it?" Sarah asked. James smiled. "No, the real weapon is the targeting system. We've spent 50 years studying Vraxian shields. We know how they work, how they distribute energy, how they coordinate between ships, and we found something interesting." He pulled up another display showing the Vraxian battle formation, called the Hammer of Heaven. The formation arranged ships in a complex three-dimensional pattern, where their shields overlapped and reinforced each other. "It's brilliant engineering," James admitted. "The overlapping shields make the formation nearly invulnerable. Energy weapons that would destroy one ship get distributed across dozens of ships. The formation has never been broken, but," Sarah prompted, "but the overlapping creates harmonics. The shields pulse in synchronized patterns to distribute energy evenly. If you hit the formation at exactly the right point, at exactly the right moment, with exactly the right amount of force, you don't break one shield. You break all of them." Sarah stared at the display. "That's what the mayhem is for. We're not trying to destroy ships. We're trying to cause a cascade failure." "Exactly. But we need to be close. Very close. And we need perfect timing. If we miss the window by even a microsecond, the rod just punches through one ship and the formation stays intact." "How close?" Sarah asked. 500 kilometers. Maybe less." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. 500 kilometers was nothing in space combat. The Indomitable would need to charge directly into the enemy formation, taking fire from hundreds of ships the entire way. The chances of surviving that approach were almost zero. "Can the ship make it?" she asked quietly. James was silent for a moment. Then he said, "I don't know. The armor is the best we can build. The shields are powerful. We have redundant systems for everything, but we've never tested it against this level of firepower." "No one has," Sarah nodded. She had expected that answer. "Thank you, James. Keep the weapon ready." She left the laboratory and headed to the bridge. The Indomitable's bridge was different from bridges on alien ships. Instead of one commander sitting alone in the center, the human bridge had multiple stations where officers worked together. It was louder and more chaotic, but Sarah preferred it. In her experience, the best decisions came from many minds working together, not one mind working alone. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was at the pilot station running simulations. He was only 24 years old, but he was one of the best pilots in the fleet. Sarah had specifically requested him for this mission. "How are the simulations going?" she asked. Marcus looked up, startled. He quickly stood at attention. Admiral, sorry I didn't hear you come in. At ease. Answer the question. Marcus sat back down and gestured at his screen. I've run 300 combat approaches. In 70% of them, we get destroyed before reaching firing range. In 25%, we reach range but miss the timing window. In 5%, everything works. 5%, Sarah repeated. Those aren't good odds. No, ma'am. But that's assuming we fly a predictable approach. If I get creative, if I use the asteroid belt for cover and make random course changes, the odds improve to maybe 15%. 15%, Sarah said. I'll take it. She spent the last hours before the battle meeting with her officers, making sure everyone understood the plan. It was a desperate plan, maybe even a crazy plan, but it was the only plan that had any chance of working. When the Vraxian fleet finally arrived at the edge of the Sol system, every sensor in human space detected them. 500 warships, each one larger and more powerful than the best human vessel. They moved in perfect formation, their shields glowing with power. Supreme Commander Thalrex broadcast a message to Earth. His species looked like tall reptiles with bronze scales and golden eyes. He wore elaborate armor and his voice was deep and commanding. Humans of Earth, he said, you have 7 days to surrender. Place yourselves under the protection of the Vraxian Empire and you will be spared. Resist and your civilization will be erased. We have destroyed 200 civilizations. You will not be the first to defeat us. Choose wisely. The message ended. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet begin its approach. Around her, the crew worked quietly at their stations. No one spoke about the odds they faced. No one needed to. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to the entire defense fleet. The enemy is here. They think we will surrender because we are young and weak. They think we will run because we are afraid. They are wrong. We are human. We don't surrender. We don't run. And today we show the galaxy what that means. All ships, battle stations, may whatever gods you believe in watch over us all. Across the fleet, crews rushed to their positions. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. The human ships moved into formation. 47 vessels against 500. It looked hopeless. Sarah watched the Vraxian fleet arrange itself into the Hammer of Heaven formation. The enemy ships moved with perfect precision, each one taking its exact position. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. They're so confident, Lieutenant Webb whispered beside her. They're not even trying to hide their formation. Why would they? Sarah replied. That formation has never been beaten. They have no reason to think we can do what 200 other civilizations could not. She opened a private channel to all her ship captains. Remember the plan. The opening engagement is not about winning. It's about learning. We need to test their shields, their weapons, their response times. We need to make them think we're fighting a conventional battle. The Indomitable will hang back and analyze everything. When the time is right, we strike. The captains acknowledged her orders. Sarah took a deep breath and gave the command that would start the battle. All ships advance. Engage the enemy. The human fleet moved forward, accelerating toward the massive Vraxian formation. Energy weapons began to fire. Missiles launched. The space between the two fleets filled with light and death. The battle for humanity's survival had begun. The first human ship to die was the destroyer Yamato. It had barely fired 3 volleys when a Vraxian plasma lance cut through its shields like they were made of paper. The ship broke apart in a silent explosion that lit up the void. 43 crew members died in less than 2 seconds. Admiral Sarah Chen watched it happen on her display and felt nothing. She could not afford to feel anything yet. There would be time for grief later, if any of them survived. Yamato is gone, reported Commander Lisa Park from the tactical station. The Wellington is taking heavy damage. They're requesting permission to fall back. Denied, Sarah said firmly. All ships maintain engagement. We need more data. Around the Indomitable, the battle raged. Human ships darted in and out of the Vraxian formation, firing everything they had. Energy beams cut through space. Missiles exploded against shields. Nuclear warheads detonated in brilliant flashes. But for every shot the humans fired, the Vraxians fired 10. The difference in power was obvious and terrible. The destroyer Sol managed to get close to a Vraxian cruiser and fired its main railgun at point-blank range. The tungsten slug hit the enemy shields and simply stopped, its kinetic energy absorbed and distributed across the entire formation. The Sol tried to retreat, but 3 Vraxian ships focused fire on it simultaneously. The destroyer's shields collapsed and the ship died. Soul is destroyed, Lisa reported. Her voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the strain underneath. That's 2 ships lost in 4 minutes. Keep recording everything, Sarah ordered. Shield frequencies, weapon signatures, response patterns. I want every piece of data we can get. Dr. James Okonkwo worked frantically at his station, analyzing the flood of information coming from the battle. His fingers flew across multiple displays as quantum computers processed terabytes of sensor data. The formation is exactly as we predicted, James said. Shield overlap at 87% efficiency. Energy distribution is nearly perfect. But I'm seeing the harmonics. The shields pulse together every 3.4 seconds. Can we exploit it? Sarah asked. Maybe. I need more data. We need to test their shields with different weapon types at different angles. James looked up at her. We need to hit them with everything we have. Sarah opened the fleet channel. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, change of tactics. I want simultaneous strikes on target sectors 7 through 12. Use all weapon types. Kinetic, energy, nuclear, everything. Fire on my mark. She watched the tactical display as her ships maneuvered into position. The Vraxians seemed confused by the sudden coordination. Their formation shifted slightly, adjusting to meet the new threat. All ships ready, Lisa reported. Fire, Sarah commanded. 20 human ships fired at once. Railgun slugs, plasma beams, laser cannons, and 3 nuclear missiles all converged on a small section of the Vraxian formation. For a moment, the enemy shields flickered under the massive combined assault, but then the formation compensated, redistributing energy, and the shields held firm. 3 more human ships died in the counterattack. The carrier Independence, the frigate Cairo, the destroyer Mumbai. Each one took dozens of crew members with it. We lost 3 more, Lisa said quietly. That's 5 ships down. We can't keep this up much longer. But James was smiling, actually smiling. I've got it, he said excitedly. I've got the pattern. The shields redistribute energy through specific nodes. I can see the timing now. Admiral, I can calculate the firing solution. How accurate? Sarah asked. 92% confidence. But we need to be at 500 kilometers or less, and we need to fire at exactly the right microsecond. Sarah nodded slowly. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. They had lost 5 ships already, and the real attack had not even started yet. How many more would die before this was over? All ships begin fallback maneuver delta, she ordered. Make it look like we're retreating in disorder. The human fleet began to pull back, their movements looking panicked and uncoordinated. Some ships fired wildly as they retreated. Others appeared to have suffered damage to their engines. It was all an act, carefully choreographed, but the Vraxians did not know that. On the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory, Supreme Commander Thalrex watched the humans retreat. His golden eyes narrowed with satisfaction. They break already, said his second-in-command, Shipmaster Krell. Shall we pursue and finish them? Thalrex considered. The human resistance had been fierce but ultimately futile. Their ships were crude and their tactics were desperate. They fought with the desperation of a species that knew it was about to die. No, Thalrex decided. Maintain the hammer formation. Let them exhaust themselves against our shields. They cannot harm us. But even as he said it, something bothered him. The humans had fought strangely. They had exposed their ships to fire deliberately, as if they were testing the Vraxian weapons. They had used an odd mixture of technology, combining primitive kinetic weapons with advanced energy systems, and they had coordinated their attacks in unexpected ways. Thalrex had conquered many species in his long career. He had learned to read the patterns of battle, to understand how different civilizations fought. But the humans were hard to read. Their tactics seemed almost random, chaotic. It made him uneasy. Increase sensor focus on that large vessel, he ordered, pointing at the Indomitable on his tactical display, the one that has not engaged yet. What is it doing? Analyzing, Commander, Krell reported. The vessel appears to be a Dreadnought-class warship. It is heavily armored but slow. It has been hanging back from the main battle, but sensors indicate massive power signatures building inside. A weapon? Possibly. But our shields can absorb anything they can fire. The hammer of heaven is impenetrable. Thalrex nodded, but his unease remained. There was something about this battle that felt wrong. The humans should have surrendered by now. Instead, they continued fighting even as their ships died. What did they know that he did not? Aboard the Indomitable, Sarah watched her fleet fall back in false retreat. The Vraxians were following, but slowly, maintaining their perfect formation. Good. That was exactly what she needed. "How's the mayhem?" she asked James. "Charging. We're at 40% power. We need another 10 minutes for full charge." "We might not have 10 minutes," Sarah replied. "Get it charged as fast as you can." She walked to Lieutenant Marcus Webb's station. The young pilot was studying the route he would need to fly, his face intense with concentration. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked quietly. Marcus looked up at her. His face was young, but his eyes held the weight of what was about to happen. "Admiral, I've been flying simulations of this run for weeks. I know every asteroid in that belt. I know every possible approach vector. I'm as ready as I'll ever be." "Good, because when we start this run, there's no turning back. We either reach firing position or we die trying." "I understand, ma'am." Sarah put a hand on his shoulder. "Your family is in New York, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "My parents and my little sister." "Then you're not just flying for humanity. You're flying for them. Keep that in mind when things get difficult." Marcus swallowed hard and nodded. Sarah moved back to her command chair. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They all knew what was coming. They all knew the odds. But no one showed fear. That was the thing about humans that the galaxy did not understand. When facing impossible odds, when death was certain, humans did not give up. They fought harder. "Admiral, I'm picking up something strange," Lisa said suddenly. "One of our destroyers, the Warsaw, just broke formation. They're charging directly at the Vraxian line." Sarah pulled up the tactical display. The destroyer Warsaw was indeed accelerating hard toward the enemy. Its engines at maximum burn. "Get me Captain Kowalski now." The channel opened. Captain Jan Kowalski appeared on screen. His ship was shaking from weapons fire and half his bridge was on fire behind him. "Admiral, my main reactor is failing," Jan said calmly. "I'm going to lose containment in about 90 seconds. I can try to eject it and save my crew, or I can do something useful with it." Sarah understood immediately. "Jan, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. We're dead anyway. But maybe I can give you something useful. I'm going to ram the formation at full speed. Use whatever data you get from it." Before Sarah could respond, the channel cut. The Warsaw accelerated even faster, pushing its dying reactor beyond all safety limits. Vraxian ships focused fire on it, but the destroyer's captain kept it flying through sheer determination and skill. The Warsaw slammed into the Vraxian formation at incredible speed. Its reactor went critical at the moment of impact. The explosion was massive, a miniature sun that lit up the entire battlefield. 3 Vraxian ships were caught in the blast. Their shields flickered and failed. The ships themselves were destroyed or heavily damaged. For just a moment, there was a gap in the Hammer of Heaven formation. "Did you see that?" James shouted. The shields failed. When the reactor exploded, the energy pulse disrupted the harmonic frequency. The formation tried to absorb it, but couldn't distribute it fast enough. "The shields cascaded!" Sarah felt her heart pounding. Captain Kowalski had just given them critical information with his sacrifice. The Vraxian shields could be overloaded if hit with enough energy at once. "Can we replicate that effect with the mayhem?" she asked. "Yes, that's exactly what the mayhem will do. The kinetic impact will release so much energy that the shields won't be able to distribute it. They'll cascade just like we just saw." "How long until we can fire?" 7 minutes. Maybe 6 if I push it." Sarah opened the fleet channel. "All ships, did you see what the Warsaw just did? Captain Kowalski showed us that the Vraxian formation can be broken. Now we're going to break it. All ships, prepare for final attack pattern Omega. The Indomitable is going in." A cheer went up across the fleet channels. The crews had seen their ships die one by one. They had watched the seemingly invincible Vraxian formation absorb everything they could throw at it. But now they had hope. One brave captain had shown them that the enemy could bleed. "Lieutenant Webb, take us in," Sarah commanded. "Maximum acceleration. Use the asteroid belt for cover. Get us to 500 kilometers from the center of their formation." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. His hands moved across the controls and the Indomitable began to move. The massive Dreadnought accelerated slowly at first. It was not built for speed. It was built to take punishment and deliver one devastating blow. As it picked up velocity, Marcus guided it toward the nearby asteroid belt. The Vraxians noticed immediately. On the Eternal Victory, alarms began to sound. "Commander, the human Dreadnought is moving," Krell reported. "It's heading directly toward us." Thalrek stood up from his command throne. "Intercept course?" Yes, Commander. Analysis suggests they intend to ram us. Thalrex laughed. They think to break the hammer with one ship, foolish. All vessels, focus fire on the Dreadnought. Destroy it before it reaches us. 200 Vraxian ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. The first volley lit up space with deadly energy. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and missile swarms all converged on the approaching human vessel. The Indomitable's shields flared as they absorbed the impacts. The ship shuddered but kept coming. Marcus flew it into the asteroid belt using the large space rocks as cover. Vraxian fire blasted asteroids apart, sending fragments spinning in all directions. Shields at 70%, reported the shield officer. Multiple hits across all sections. Keep them up, Sarah ordered. Engineering, how's our armor? Outer layer is ablating as designed, came the reply from Chief Engineer Rodriguez. We're printing replacement plates, but they're destroying them as fast as we can make them. The Indomitable pushed through the asteroid field. Marcus's piloting was exceptional, using every bit of cover he could find. But there was no real hiding from 200 ships. The Vraxian fire was relentless. A plasma beam punched through the shields and hit the port side. Armor plating vaporized. 3 compartments explosively decompressed. Damage alarms screamed across the bridge. Section 12 is gone, Lisa reported. 14 casualties. Sealing bulkheads. Keep moving, Sarah said. Marcus did not need to be told. He kept the Dreadnought accelerating, kept it moving toward the enemy formation. Around them, space was filled with fire and death. This was only the beginning. The real test was still ahead. 4 minutes to firing range, James called out. Mayhem is at 70% charge. Sarah gripped her command chair. 4 minutes. They just needed to survive for 4 more minutes. Then they would find out if this crazy plan would work. The Indomitable flew on, taking hit after hit, refusing to die. Behind it, the rest of the human fleet followed, ready to support the final attack. The Vraxian formation waited ahead, its shields glowing with power, confident in its invincibility. Neither side knew that in 4 minutes everything would change. The Indomitable shook violently as another volley of Vraxian fire slammed into its hull. Admiral Sarah Chen gripped her command chair, watching the damage report scroll across her display. The numbers were bad and getting worse, but they were still flying. That was what mattered. Shields down to 40%, called out Ensign Rodriguez from the shield station. The generators are overheating. We're cycling them, but we can't keep this up much longer. We don't need much longer, Sarah replied. James, a status on the weapon? Dr. Okonkwo looked up from his console, sweat running down his face. Mayhem is at 85% charge. We need 95% minimum for the shot to work. 2 more minutes, 2 minutes. Sarah looked at the tactical display. They were still 3,000 kilometers from optimal firing range. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was flying the Indomitable through a storm of enemy fire, weaving between asteroids and debris, pushing the massive ship to its absolute limits. But even his incredible skill could not protect them from the sheer volume of weapons fire coming their way. Another impact. This one hit the starboard side. Armor plating exploded outward. The ship's frame groaned from the stress. Starboard sections 18 through 22 are breached, Lisa Park reported from Tactical. Automatic bulkheads sealed, but we lost those compartments. 27 crew members were in those sections. Life signs are negative, 27 more dead. Sarah felt each loss like a knife in her chest, but she could not stop, could not turn back, not now. She had asked these people to die for a chance, just a chance to save humanity. And they had agreed. Every single one of them. Damage control teams focus on keeping the main reactor stable, she ordered. We can lose armor, we can lose weapons, but if we lose power, this is over. Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Maria Flores was already ahead of that order. She stood in the main reactor room, which was now a chaotic mess of sparks, smoke, and shouting crew members. The massive reactor core hummed with barely contained power, its magnetic containment fields glowing bright blue. Reroute power from the secondary grid, Maria shouted to her team. Divert everything non-essential to shields and the mayhem. I don't care if we lose life support on half the ship. We only need to survive for 2 more minutes. Her second officer, Lieutenant Chen, worked frantically at a control panel. Chief, we're getting feedback surges from the weapons hits. The power conduits are overloading. If we push any harder, we risk a containment failure. Maria wiped sweat from her forehead. The temperature in engineering had risen to over 40 degrees Celsius. Then we risk it. If we don't get the shot off, we're dead anyway. Keep that reactor running. On the bridge, Marcus was fighting his own battle. Flying the Indomitable was like trying to dance with a mountain. The ship was never meant to be agile. It was designed to absorb damage and keep fighting. But right now, Marcus needed it to dodge and weave like a fighter craft. Incoming missile swarm, warned the sensor officer. 60 missiles, various types. Impact in 20 seconds. Marcus's hands flew across the controls. He rolled the massive Dreadnought, presenting its heavily armored dorsal surface to the missiles. At the same time, he increased thrust and dove behind a large asteroid fragment. Most of the missiles slammed into the asteroid, detonating in a chain of explosions that tore the rock apart. But 12 missiles made it through. They impacted the Indomitable's dorsal armor in quick succession. The ship lurched. Warning alarms screamed. But the armor held. That was the genius of human engineering. Where alien ships relied on shields and elegant design, humans built thick layers of ablative armor that could be replaced and regenerated even during combat. It was crude and heavy, but it worked. Beautiful flying, Lieutenant, Sarah said. She meant it. Marcus was keeping them alive through skill and instinct. Thank you, ma'am, Marcus replied, not taking his eyes off his controls. But I don't know how much more the ship can take. As if to emphasize his point, another plasma beam punched through the shields and carved a glowing line across the port hull. More compartments vented to space. More crew members died. Supreme Commander Thalrex watched the human dreadnoughts approach with growing confusion and anger. The ship should have been destroyed by now. His fleet had fired enough weapons to level a small moon. Yet the human vessel kept coming, kept pushing forward despite taking catastrophic damage. How is that ship still functional? He demanded. Shipmaster Krell studied his tactical displays. Their armor is regenerating, Commander. They have some kind of automated repair system, and their ship design includes multiple redundant systems. We destroy one power conduit and they simply reroute through another. Then destroy all the conduits, Thalrex snapped. All ships intensify fire. I want that dreadnought reduced to atoms. The Vraxian fleet increased their assault. The space around the Indomitable became a solid wall of deadly energy. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, missiles, and kinetic weapons all converged on the human ship. The Indomitable's shields collapsed completely. Without that protection, the ship's armor bore the full force of the assault. Whole sections of the hull began to melt and peel away. The ship's outer layers looked like a wounded animal, bleeding metal and atmosphere into the void. But still it came on. Shields are gone, Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with stress. We're on armor alone now. Mayhem charge at 90%, James called out. 1 more minute. Hull integrity is failing, Lisa added. We're losing structural cohesion. The ship is literally being torn apart. Sarah looked at the tactical display. They were at 1,500 kilometers from optimal firing range. Still too far. They needed to get closer. Marcus, can you get us another 1,000 kilometers? Marcus did not answer immediately. He was too focused on flying. The Indomitable was shaking itself apart around them. Controls were failing. The ship was responding sluggishly to his commands. But he kept pushing. I'll get us there, Admiral, he finally said. Or die trying. Down in the medical bay, Dr. Yuki Tanaka worked on a steady stream of wounded crew members. The bay was overwhelmed. Injured people lay on every available surface. Some were burned by energy weapon hits. Others were suffering from explosive decompression. A few had radiation poisoning from damaged reactor shielding. Doctor, this man needs immediate surgery, called Nurse Patterson. She was standing over a young ensign who had a piece of shrapnel embedded in his chest. I can't, Yuki said, her voice breaking. I have 3 people in surgery already. I can't help everyone. Then what do I do? Yuki looked at the young ensign. He was maybe 20 years old. He was dying. She had no time to save him. No resources. She had to make a choice that no doctor should ever make. Make him comfortable, she said quietly. Give him something for the pain. Nurse Patterson nodded, tears in her eyes. She administered a dose of morphine. The young ensign's breathing slowed. He looked up at the ceiling, his eyes unfocused. Did we win? He whispered. Not yet, Patterson told him gently. But we're still fighting. The ensign smiled slightly. Then he died. Yuki forced herself to turn away. She could not break down, not now. There were others who could still be saved. She moved to the next patient, her hands steady despite the grief in her heart. On the bridge, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Indomitable had lost over a third of its mass. Whole sections of the ship were simply gone, blasted away by the relentless Vraxian assault. The ship's superstructure was exposed in places, glowing red-hot from weapons fire. "Mayhem at 95%, James announced. "We can fire." Sarah looked at the range indicator. They were at 800 kilometers. Not perfect, but close enough. They would not survive long enough to get any closer. "Marcus, level us out," she ordered. "James, prepare to fire on my command." The Indomitable straightened its approach, flying directly toward the heart of the Vraxian formation. It was no longer trying to dodge or weave. It was committing fully to the attack. Thalrek saw the change in the human ship's behavior. "They're making their final run," he said. "All ships concentrate fire on their bow section. Stop that ship before it reaches us." The Vraxian fleet focused everything on the front of the Indomitable. The ship's forward armor melted away in seconds. The bow structure began to collapse. But behind that armor, behind the failing structure, the Mayhem device was charging its final power reserves. James watched his readouts with absolute focus. The weapon was ready. But the firing solution had to be perfect. One shot, they would only get one shot. Miss the timing by even a microsecond and the harmonic disruption would fail. The Vraxian shields would hold, and humanity would lose. He calculated, recalculated, checked his numbers against the quantum computer's predictions. The shield harmonics pulsed every 3.4 seconds. The energy distribution nodes cycled in a specific pattern. There was a window, just a tiny window where all the factors aligned. "I have the solution," he said. "But Admiral, we need to be at 500 kilometers. At our current range, the probability drops to 60%. Sarah looked at the range indicator. They were at 700 kilometers. Then 650. The ship was accelerating but also disintegrating. They might not make it to 500. "We take the shot at 600, Sarah decided. "We won't survive long enough to get closer." "Admiral," James started to protest. "That's an order, Doctor. Prepare to fire at 600 kilometers. James nodded reluctantly. He adjusted his calculations, working frantically to compensate for the longer range. The success probability dropped. 60%. 55%. But it was still a chance. The Indomitable crossed 700 kilometers. Then 650. The ship was a burning wreck now, barely holding together. Crew members fought fires in the corridors. Emergency force fields held back vacuum where hull breaches had destroyed the bulkheads. The ship's reactor was screaming with the strain of powering the Mayhem. 620 kilometers. "Almost there," Marcus said through gritted teeth. The pilot controls were barely responding. He was flying on instinct now, willing the dying ship forward. 610 kilometers. "Target lock is stable," James reported. His finger hovered over the firing control. Harmonic window opening in 5 seconds. 605 kilometers. Sarah watched the numbers count down. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. Humanity's survival balanced on a knife's edge. If this worked, they might have a chance. If it failed, they would all die here. 600 kilometers. "Fire," Sarah commanded. James pressed the firing control. The Mayhem device unleashed all its stored energy in a single catastrophic instant. Magnetic coils that had taken 15 years to build fired once and burned themselves out. The tungsten rod, 50 tons of dense metal, was accelerated down a 300-meter rail to 15,000 kilometers per second. The recoil nearly tore the Indomitable apart. The ship's entire aft section buckled from the stress. The main reactor went into emergency shutdown. Power failed across half the vessel, but the rod was away. It crossed the 600 kilometers in 0.04 of a second. To the Vraxian ships, it appeared as a flash of light. Then it was among them. The rod struck the Vraxian flagship, the Eternal Victory, precisely at the center of the hammer formation. The kinetic energy of the impact was equivalent to 50 megatons of TNT. The ship's shields tried to absorb the energy and distribute it across the formation. For a microsecond, the system worked. Energy flowed through the shield network, spreading across all 500 ships. Then the harmonics failed. James had calculated the timing perfectly. The rod hit at exactly the moment when the shield network was redistributing energy through its primary nodes. The system could not handle the massive spike. Energy that should have been distributed evenly instead cascaded backwards through the network. Shields overloaded, power systems backfed, capacitors exploded. The Eternal Victory vanished in a ball of nuclear fire as its reactor went critical. The ships nearest to it tried to compensate, tried to absorb the overflow of energy. Their shields exploded. Their hulls buckled and tore. The cascade spread outward like a wave. Ship after ship lost shields, then power, then structural integrity. Some exploded. Others simply went dark and tumbled through space, their crews dead or dying. The legendary Hammer of Heaven formation tore itself apart in less than a minute. Aboard the dying Indomitable, Sarah watched it happen. She sat in her command chair on a bridge lit only by emergency lights. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Her ship was a wreck. But they had done it. They had broken the unbreakable formation. All remaining ships, she broadcast, her voice hoarse. Attack now. Hit them while they're vulnerable. The human fleet, battered and reduced to 32 ships, charged into the chaos. They fired on disabled Vraxian vessels. They targeted ships that were trying to restore power. It was not elegant. It was not honorable. It was survival. Sarah slumped back in her chair. She was exhausted. But she allowed herself a small smile. Humanity was still in this fight. Supreme Commander Thalrex picked himself up from the deck of his command bridge. Everything was dark except for emergency lighting. Smoke filled the air. Around him his crew lay dead or injured. The ship shuddered and groaned, dying slowly. Report, he croaked, tasting blood in his mouth. Shipmaster Krell pulled himself up using a broken console. Half his face was burned. Commander, the formation has collapsed. Shield cascade destroyed or disabled 70% of the fleet. 212 ships are confirmed lost. Another 143 are heavily damaged and not combat capable. Thalrex felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of military service. Shock, complete and total shock. That's impossible. The Hammer of Heaven cannot fail. It has never failed. It just did, Commander. Krell brought up what remained of the tactical display. It showed the battle space now filled with debris and dead ships. The perfect formation was gone, replaced by chaos. And moving through that chaos were the human vessels, attacking like predators sensing wounded prey. Thalrex watched a human destroyer fire on one of his disabled cruisers. The cruiser, its shields gone and half its crew dead, could not defend itself. It exploded silently. Another Vraxian ship met the same fate seconds later. How many ships do the humans have left? Thalrex asked. 32 combat-capable vessels, Krell replied. But Commander, their Dreadnought is dead in space. It fired its main weapon and the recoil destroyed its propulsion and power systems. It's just drifting. Thalrex looked at the image of the human Dreadnought. The Indomitable was a wreck. It looked like someone had taken a beautiful ship and fed it into a shredder. Whole sections were missing. The hull was melted and torn. But it had done its job. That one ship had destroyed his fleet. We still outnumber them, Thalrex said slowly. We have 145 ships that can still fight. We can regroup. We can still win this. But even as he said the words, he knew they were hollow. His fleet was broken. The ships that remained were scattered, confused, leaderless. Many had damaged weapons, failed shields, or crippled engines, and the humans were hunting them efficiently, picking off the weakest targets first. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, said the communications officer. It's from the human admiral. Put it through. Admiral Sarah Chen's face appeared on the display. She looked as bad as Thalrex felt. Her uniform was torn and burned. There was blood on her face, but her eyes were hard and determined. Supreme Commander Thalrex, she said, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Nations Defense Force. Your formation is broken. Your fleet is defeated. I am offering you a chance to surrender and withdraw from this system. Accept my offer, and your surviving crews will live. Refuse, and we will destroy every ship you have left. Thalrex stared at her. A human was offering him surrender terms. Him, a commander who had never lost a battle, a warrior who had conquered 200 civilizations. This primitive species, this young race that had barely learned to leave their planet, was offering him mercy. The rage that filled him was like nothing he had ever felt. You dare, he hissed. You dare offer me surrender? I am Thalrex of the Vraxian Empire. I have crushed armies larger than your entire civilization. I will never surrender to you. Sarah's expression did not change. Then you will die here. Last chance, Commander. Save your people. The transmission ended. Thalrex stood in the darkness of his ruined bridge, trembling with fury and something else. Something he did not want to name. Fear. Commander, Krell said quietly. Perhaps we should consider— No, Thalrex snapped. Reform the fleet. All ships that can fight move to attack Formation Delta. We still have superior numbers. We will crush them. But the fleet did not respond quickly. Ship captains reported damage. Crews were overwhelmed with casualties. Communication systems were failing. The precise, coordinated Vraxian military machine had become a confused mob. Meanwhile, the human fleet moved with purpose. They had trained for this. They had planned for fighting against superior numbers. Their tactics were not elegant, but they were effective. The destroyer Beijing teamed up with the frigate Lagos to attack a damaged Vraxian battlecruiser. The Lagos drew the battlecruiser's fire while the Beijing came from below and fired 3 nuclear torpedoes into its engineering section. The battlecruiser broke apart. The carrier Enterprise, despite losing half its fighter wing, launched its remaining craft in a coordinated strike against a cluster of Vraxian ships trying to regroup. The fighters were small and fast, darting between the larger vessels, targeting power systems and weapons. 3 more Vraxian ships went dark. Aboard the disabled Indomitable, Sarah watched the battle continue. Her ship was powerless and drifting, but it still had functioning sensors and communications. She could still command the fleet. Admiral, the Stockholm reports they've destroyed another Vraxian cruiser. Lisa Park reported. That's 8 enemy ships destroyed since the formation collapsed. Good, keep the pressure on. Don't let them regroup. Sarah looked at Dr. Okonkwo, who was working at a portable console. James, can we get any power back? The main reactor is offline permanently, James replied. But I'm trying to bring auxiliary power online. If I can get the backup generators working, we'll at least have lights and life support. Do it, and see if you can restore communications with Earth. They need to know what's happening here. A few minutes later, James managed to restore partial power. Lights flickered on across the bridge. Sarah immediately opened a channel to Earth. President Rebecca Morrison appeared on the screen. She looked like she had aged 10 years in the past few hours. Behind her, Sarah could see the Situation Room filled with military officers and government officials. Admiral Chen, the president said, her voice thick with emotion. We've been watching the sensor feeds. The formation collapsed. You actually did it. We did it, Madam President, Sarah replied. But the battle isn't over. The Vraxians still have operational ships. We're hunting them down, but it's going to take time. What are your casualties? Sarah felt her throat tighten. 15 ships destroyed. Every remaining ship has taken damage. Crew casualties are estimated at over 4,000 dead, 6,000 wounded. The Indomitable is disabled and will probably never fly again. The president closed her eyes. So many? Yes, ma'am. But they saved humanity. Every person who died here today saved billions of lives on Earth. And the Vraxian commander? Did he accept your surrender terms? No, ma'am. He refused. We're going to have to finish this the hard way. The president nodded slowly. Then finish it, Admiral. You have full authorization to do whatever is necessary. The channel closed. Sarah turned back to her tactical display. The human fleet was winning, but slowly. For every Vraxian ship they destroyed, they lost time and ammunition, and time was something they did not have much of. Admiral, sensors are picking up something, the sensor officer called out. Multiple faster-than-light signatures at the edge of the system. Ships are jumping in. Sarah felt her heart sink. This was what she had feared. Vraxian reinforcements. She pulled up the long-range sensors, expecting to see another massive fleet arriving to finish what Thalrex had started. But the ships that appeared were not Vraxian. They were from dozens of different species. Sarah recognized Meridian Collective cruisers, Taloni destroyers, Kickstar battleships, and vessels from at least 20 other civilizations. Over 100 ships in total. What? Sarah started to say. Then her communications console lit up with incoming messages. Dozens of them. She opened the first one. It was from Ambassador Tikesh of the Meridian Collective, the same species that had first made contact with humanity 50 years ago. Admiral Chen, Tikesh said, her crystalline features reflecting the lights of her ship's bridge. The Meridian Collective stands with humanity. We are here to help. Another channel opened. This one from Commander Xril of the Taloni. The Vraxian Empire destroyed our civilization 20 years ago. They thought they had broken us. But we survived. Today we help you break them. More channels opened. More species announcing their support. Sarah realized what was happening. The galaxy had watched humanity fight. They had watched a young species stand against the most powerful empire in known space. They had watched humans refuse to surrender even when facing certain death. And something had changed. The civilizations that had voted against helping humanity just hours ago were now rushing to join the fight. "This is unbelievable," Lisa whispered. "No," Sarah said quietly. "This is what happens when you show the galaxy you'd rather die than submit." We inspired them. The newcomers did not wait for orders. They immediately engaged the remaining Vraxian fleet. Fresh ships with full weapons and shields tore into the damaged Vraxian vessels. The balance of power shifted completely. Thalrex watched his fleet die. Ship after ship was destroyed or forced to surrender. His crew looked to him for orders, but he had none to give. The battle was lost. The war was lost. Everything he had built over 3 centuries was falling apart. "Commander," Krell said gently, "it's over. We must surrender." Thalrex wanted to refuse. Every instinct screamed at him to fight to the last ship, to die rather than admit defeat. But he looked at his crew. These were good warriors. They had served loyally. They did not deserve to die for his pride. "Open a channel to the human admiral," he said finally. Sarah's face appeared again. This time she said nothing. She just waited. "I accept your terms," Thalrex said. The words felt like poison. "The Vraxian fleet will withdraw from the Sol system. We will not return. You will also release all your current vassal states," Sarah added. "And you will pay reparations to the civilizations you have conquered." "That is not part of the terms," Thalrex protested. "It is now. You came here to make us slaves. You failed. Now you will free the slaves you already have. Those are my terms. Accept them or continue fighting." Thalrex looked at the tactical display, at the 100+ ships that had arrived to support humanity, at his own shattered fleet. He had no choice. "I accept." "Good, you have 12 hours to collect your survivors and leave the system. If you are still here after that, we will consider it an act of war." The channel closed. Thalrex stood in silence, barely aware of his crew moving around him. He had been defeated by a species that had been in space for less than 100 years.
How was that possible?
Finally, he understood. The humans had won not because they were stronger or more advanced. They had won because they thought differently. They did not follow the rules of galactic warfare. They did not fight like civilized species. They fought like survivors, like people who had learned to overcome impossible odds through creativity and determination. The Vraxian Empire had forgotten how to do that. They had become comfortable, predictable, rigid, and today that rigidity had destroyed them. "Shipmaster Krell," Thalrex said quietly, "begin recovery operations. Collect all survivors. We're going home." "Yes, Commander." As the Vraxian fleet began its retreat, Sarah allowed herself to relax slightly. The immediate danger was over. Humanity had survived, but she knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy had changed today, and humanity's place in it would never be the same. "Admiral," Lisa said, "Earth is broadcasting. Every city on the planet is celebrating. They're saying we saved the world." Sarah shook her head. "We didn't save the world. We just showed it how to fight back. The real work starts now." She looked out at the stars, at the debris field that had once been the hammer of heaven, at the ships from dozens of civilizations that had come to help. Humanity had proven itself today. But with that proof came responsibility. The galaxy was watching, and from now on, humans would be players on the galactic stage, not just observers. Sarah wondered if humanity was ready for that. Then she smiled. Ready or not, they would figure it out. That was what humans did best. They adapted. They survived. They never gave up. And today they had shown the entire galaxy what that meant. 3 weeks after the battle, Admiral Sarah Chen walked through the corridors of Luna Station. The station had become the center of a new kind of activity. Representatives from 40 different civilizations filled the meeting rooms and conference halls. Ship captains and military advisors crowded the observation decks. The quiet outpost that had once been a simple way station was now the most important place in the galaxy. Sarah's reflection in the polished windows showed a woman who had aged years in just a few weeks. There were new lines on her face and gray in her hair that had not been there before, but her eyes remained sharp and alert. She had work to do. Dr. James Okonkwo caught up with her in the main corridor. He carried a data pad filled with technical reports. "Admiral, I have the final damage assessment for the Indomitable." "It's not good." "Let me guess," Sarah said. "Complete loss." "Structurally, yes. The ship will never fly again. But the good news is that we can salvage most of the technology. The weapon systems, the armor technology, the quantum computers. We're already designing the next generation of dreadnoughts based on what we learned. Sarah nodded. The Indomitable had served its purpose. The ship had been built for one mission, and it had completed that mission perfectly. Now it would become something else, a teacher. Its remains would help humanity build better ships. How many species have requested our ship design data? Sarah asked. 37, James replied with a slight smile. The Meridian Collective wants to license our armor technology. The Taloni want our weapon systems. Even the Kickstar, who have been building ships for 5,000 years, admitted they could learn something from our redundancy designs. They entered the main conference room. It was filled with representatives from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Takesh of the Meridian Collective presided over the meeting. Her crystalline form reflected the lights in beautiful patterns. Admiral Chen, Takesh said warmly, please join us. We were just discussing the formal changes to the Galactic Charter. Sarah took her seat. Around the table sat beings from dozens of worlds. Most of them had voted against helping humanity just weeks ago. Now they looked at her with respect and something else. Fear. Not fear of humanity's weapons, but fear of being on the wrong side next time. The Council has voted to grant humanity full membership status, Takesh announced. No probationary period. No restrictions. Earth will have the same rights and responsibilities as any other member world. Additionally, added Chancellor Vrix of the Kickstar Confederation, we have voted to establish a new military doctrine, the Defensive Alliance Protocol. Any member world under attack can call for support, and all member worlds must respond. This will prevent situations like what happened to humanity from occurring again. Sarah listened to the speeches and the formal declarations. Politicians love to talk, but words meant little compared to actions. The question was whether these civilizations would actually honor their new commitments when tested. After the formal meeting ended, Sarah met privately with Ambassador Takesh. They stood on an observation deck looking down at Earth. Your people are celebrating, Takesh said. Every city is lit up. They know what you did for them. We lost over 4,000 people in that battle, Sarah replied quietly. Every one of them had family, friends, people who loved them. I'm not sure celebration is the right response. Grief and joy can exist together, Takesh said gently. Your people mourn the dead while celebrating the living. That is not wrong. Sarah was silent for a moment. Then she asked, why did you come? Your fleet arrived right when we needed it most, but the Council had voted against helping us. You could have stayed away. Takesh's crystalline features shifted, the alien equivalent of a sad smile. Because we were wrong, Admiral. The Council was wrong. We let fear guide us instead of principle. When we saw your ships dying, when we saw your dreadnought charge into certain death, we understood something important. What was that? That courage is contagious. Your people refused to surrender even when surrender was logical. You fought when fighting was foolish. And in doing so, you reminded the galaxy of something we had forgotten. Sometimes the right choice is not the safe choice. So other species came because they felt guilty? Sarah asked. Some yes, but others came because they saw opportunity. They saw a young species willing to challenge the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And they thought, if humans can do this, perhaps we can do more too. Your victory gave hope to civilizations that had given up hope. The door opened and General Marcus Rodriguez entered. He looked exhausted but satisfied. Admiral, I have news. Supreme Commander Thalrex has arrived. He's requesting to speak with you. Sarah turned in surprise. Thalrex is here? I thought he went back to the Vraxian Empire. He did. But he came back. He brought a small delegation. No weapons, no military escort. He says he wants to negotiate personally. Sarah exchanged a glance with Takesh. This should be interesting. Where is he? Conference room 7. He's waiting for you. Sarah made her way to the conference room. 2 human Marines stood guard outside the door. They had weapons but looked more ceremonial than threatening. Inside, she found Thalrex standing at the window looking out at Earth. The Vraxian commander looked different from the last time she had seen him. He wore simple robes instead of elaborate armor. His bronze scales were dull and his golden eyes were tired. He turned when she entered. Admiral Chen, he said. His voice was quiet, lacking the arrogance she remembered. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I'm surprised you came back, Sarah replied. She did not sit. She wanted to be ready to leave quickly if necessary. The terms of surrender required you to leave and not return. The terms required the fleet to leave. I came alone as a private citizen, not as a military commander. I resigned my position with the Imperial forces. That was surprising. You resigned? Why? Thalrex was silent for a long moment. Then he said, because I realized I did not understand warfare anymore. I thought I did. I have fought for 300 years. I have won 200 battles. But you defeated me in a single engagement, not because you had better ships or more weapons, but because you thought differently. He turned to face her directly. I came to learn, Admiral, to understand how you did what you did, and to offer my services as an advisor. Sarah stared at him. You want to work for humanity? Not just for humanity. For the galaxy. The Vraxian Empire is not the greatest threat out there. There are things beyond the edge of known space. Things that make my empire look weak. The rigid tactics that have served the galaxy for millennia will not work against those threats. We need new thinking. We need your thinking. Sarah sat down slowly. This was not what she had expected. Tell me about these threats. Thalrex sat across from her. The Empire has been fighting incursions from outside the galaxy for 50 years. We have kept this secret to maintain our reputation. But we are losing. These invaders do not fight like civilized species. They adapt constantly. They use unconventional tactics. They are in many ways like you. And you think humanity can help? I think humanity's approach to warfare is exactly what the galaxy needs. You do not follow our rules because you do not know our rules. That ignorance is your strength. You see possibilities that we have trained ourselves not to see. Sarah considered this carefully. Everything Thalrex was saying made sense, but she did not trust him. He had come to Earth with 500 ships to make humanity submit. That was not something she could forget. If what you're saying is true, why didn't the Empire ask for help before? Why conquer us instead of allying with us? Thalrex looked down at his hands. Pride, fear. The Empire has ruled for 10,000 years by appearing invincible. Asking a young species for help would show weakness. So instead we tried to control you, to make you part of the Empire so we could use your resources without admitting we needed them. That's a terrible plan, Sarah said bluntly. Yes, Thalrex agreed. I know that now. But the Empire's leadership does not. They still believe in the old ways. That is why I resigned. I could not serve a system that refuses to adapt. Sarah stood and walked to the window. Below, she could see ships from dozens of civilizations docked at Luna Station. The galaxy was changing. The old order was breaking down. Maybe that was a good thing. I'll consider your offer, she said finally. But I need to discuss it with my government and with the Galactic Council. If you're being honest about these external threats, then we need to prepare. All of us. That is all I ask, Thalrex replied. Over the next few weeks, Sarah held meetings with military commanders from across the galaxy. They came to learn humanity's tactics. They wanted to understand how such a young species had defeated the legendary Vraxian fleet. Sarah found herself teaching classes on military strategy. She explained human military history, from ancient battles on Earth to the development of modern space warfare. She talked about the importance of adaptability, redundancy, and creative thinking. But the most important lesson was simpler. She told them about the human pilots who had deliberately exposed their ships to fire to test enemy defenses. She told them about Captain Kowalski, who had turned his dying ship into a weapon. She told them about the crew of the Indomitable, who had kept fighting even as their ship fell apart around them. Human military doctrine is based on one principle, she explained to a room full of alien officers. Never give up. Even when the situation is hopeless, even when death is certain, you keep fighting. You look for any advantage, any weakness, any opportunity, because sometimes the impossible is just difficult, and difficult can be overcome. One of the alien officers, a young Taloni named Zesh, raised a hand. But Admiral, is that not simply stubbornness? What if there truly is no way to win? Sarah smiled. Then you make a way. You change the rules. You do something your enemy does not expect. That's what we did against the Vraxians. They expected us to fight conventionally. We did not. We used our ships as sensors, as test subjects. We sacrificed pieces to understand the whole. And when we understood, we struck. The lessons continued, and slowly the galaxy began to change its thinking. Military academies started teaching human tactics alongside traditional doctrine. Ship designers began incorporating human engineering principles, adding redundancy and armor to vessels that had relied solely on shields. Meanwhile, Earth itself was transforming. The battle had proven that humanity needed to be stronger. New shipyards were built. New weapons were designed. Young people joined the military in record numbers, inspired by the victory over the Vraxians. But Sarah worried about this enthusiasm. She had seen the cost of war up close. She had watched good people die. She did not want Earth to become a militaristic society, focused only on war. She shared these concerns with President Morrison during a private meeting. "I understand your worry," the president said, "but the galaxy is a dangerous place. We need to be prepared." "Prepared, yes," Sarah agreed, "but not paranoid. We should build our military, but not at the cost of everything else. Science, art, culture, exploration, these things matter too." "What are you suggesting?" "Balance. We maintain a strong defense, but we also invest in peaceful cooperation. We share our knowledge with other species. We build alliances based on mutual respect, not fear. We become known not just for our ability to fight, but for our ability to build." The president nodded slowly. "I like that vision, but it will be difficult. After what we just went through, many people want revenge. They want to make the galaxy fear us. Fear is a poor foundation for peace," Sarah replied. "Respect is better." 6 months after the battle, a massive ceremony was held on Luna Station. Representatives from over 60 civilizations attended. The station had been expanded to accommodate everyone. The ceremony had 2 purposes. First, to honor those who had died in the battle. A memorial was unveiled, listing the names of every human who had given their life defending Earth. The list was long and painful to read. Second, to celebrate the new defensive alliance. 60 civilizations formally signed the treaty, pledging to defend each other against aggression. It was the largest military alliance in galactic history. Sarah stood on the stage wearing her dress uniform. She had been promoted to Fleet Admiral of Earth's Defense Forces. But the promotion felt hollow compared to the weight of the names on the memorial wall. She gave a short speech, keeping it simple. "We fought because we had no choice. We won because we refused to lose. But victory does not erase the cost. We must remember the dead, and we must honor them by building a galaxy where such sacrifices are no longer necessary. That is our duty. That is our promise." The ceremony ended with a moment of silence. Sarah stood with her eyes closed, thinking of Captain Kowalski and the crew of the Warsaw. Thinking of the young ensign who had died in the medical bay. Thinking of the thousands of others whose names were now carved in stone. Later, Sarah returned to her quarters on the station. She was exhausted. The past months had been a blur of meetings, ceremonies, and work. She wanted nothing more than to sleep for about a week, but when she entered her quarters, she found a package waiting for her. It was from Dr. Okonkwo. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a small piece of metal about the size of her palm. It had been polished to a mirror shine. Attached was a note in James's handwriting. "This is a piece of the Indomitable's armor, taken from the section that took the heaviest fire. The ship is gone, but this piece survived. I thought you should have it to remember what we accomplished. What your leadership made possible. The ship may be lost, but the spirit behind it lives on. That spirit is humanity's true weapon. Never forget that." Sarah held the piece of metal, feeling its weight. She set it on her desk where she could see it every day. A reminder of what humans could accomplish when pushed to the edge. A reminder of the price of survival. A reminder that sometimes the impossible could be overcome. A message notification appeared on her personal terminal. It was from Lieutenant Marcus Webb. He had been assigned to the new pilot training program teaching the next generation of human pilots. The message was brief. "Admiral, thought you'd want to know. The first Indomitable-class Dreadnought just completed its space trials. They're naming it the Captain Jan Kowalski. Seems fitting. The ship that dies so others can live gets remembered. The crew wants you at the commissioning ceremony next month." "Hope you can make it," Sarah smiled. Yes, she would be there. She would always be there for her people. Another notification appeared. This one was from Thalrex. After months of negotiations, the Galactic Council had accepted his proposal. He would lead a new joint task force to investigate the threats beyond known space, and he wanted human officers to serve alongside Vraxian veterans. Sarah had recommended Lieutenant Webb for the position. The young pilot had proven himself capable of thinking creatively under pressure. He would represent humanity well. She looked out her window at the stars. Earth hung below, blue and beautiful. Luna Station orbited peacefully. now surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol ships. The Sol system would never be vulnerable again. But Sarah knew that safety was temporary. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers. The Vraxians had been just one threat among many. There would be others. There would always be others. The difference was that now humanity knew how to face those threats. Not with fear, not with submission, but with courage, creativity, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. She thought about the young species out there, the civilizations just discovering space travel, just learning that they were not alone in the universe. What would they learn from humanity's example? Would they see a species to be feared? Or would they see a species that proved anything was possible? Sarah hoped it was the latter. She hoped that humanity would be remembered not just for breaking the hammer of heaven, but for showing the galaxy that youth was not weakness, that being different was strength, that the newest voice sometimes had the most important things to say. A soft chime indicated another incoming message. This one was from her daughter on Earth. Emma was 15 now, old enough to understand what her mother had done. The message was a video. Emma appeared on screen, sitting in their home in Seattle. "Hi, Mom. I know you're busy saving the galaxy and everything, but I wanted you to know I'm proud of you. My teacher says you're a hero. I told her you're just my mom, but I guess you can be both." Emma paused, looking a bit shy. "I've been thinking about joining the Space Academy when I'm old enough. I want to help protect people like you did. Is that okay?" Sarah felt tears in her eyes. Her daughter wanted to follow in her footsteps. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep Emma safe on Earth where she would never face the horrors of space combat. But another part of her understood. The galaxy needed people like Emma, young people who saw the stars not as something to fear but as something to explore and protect. She recorded a response. "Emma, if you want to join the academy, I'll support you completely. But remember, being in the military is not just about fighting. It's about protecting people, building bridges between worlds, and making sure conflicts like the one we just went through never happen again. If you can commit to that, then yes, I think you'd make an excellent officer." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. The galaxy had changed, and humanity had changed with it. They were no longer the young species begging for acceptance. They were equals, respected and valued. But with that respect came responsibility. Humanity could not just think about itself anymore. They were part of something larger now. They had allies to protect. They had treaties to honor. They had a reputation to maintain. Sarah opened her terminal and began composing a report for Earth's government. It was time to start planning for the future. Time to think about what humanity would build with the peace they had fought so hard to win. The report outlined her recommendations. Expand the shipyards, but also expand the diplomatic corps. Train more soldiers, but also train more ambassadors. Build weapons, but also build research stations and cultural centers. Show the galaxy that humanity was more than just warriors. She worked late into the night, losing herself in the details of planning and strategy. This was the work that mattered now. Not the glory of battle, but the hard work of building something lasting. Finally, exhausted, she saved her work and prepared for sleep. But before she turned off the lights, she looked one more time at the piece of armor sitting on her desk. The metal gleamed in the dim light, a reminder of the indomitable and everyone who had served on her. "We did it," she whispered to the empty room. "We showed them what humans can do. Now we have to show them what we can become." She turned off the lights and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new meetings, new problems to solve. But tonight she allowed herself to rest. She had earned it. Outside her window, the stars shone bright and eternal. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space, other civilizations were watching Earth. Some with respect, some with curiosity, some with fear. But all of them knew one thing now. Humanity was here. Humanity was strong, and humanity would not be pushed around. The young species had grown up, and the galaxy would never be the same. Years would pass. The defensive alliance would prevent 3 major wars before they could start. Human technology would be adopted by dozens of species. The joint task force led by Thalrex would discover and neutralize the external threats he had warned about, thanks in large part to human tactical innovation. And the story of the indomitable of the Dreadnought that shattered the unbreakable formation would be told on 1,000 worlds. It would become a legend, a reminder that no empire was truly invincible, that courage and creativity could overcome any odds. But for now, on this quiet night, Admiral Sarah Chen simply slept. She dreamed of Earth, of her daughter, of the crew members who would never come home, and she dreamed of the future, of the galaxy that humanity would help build. It was a good dream, a dream worth fighting for, a dream worth the sacrifice. And when she woke the next morning, she would continue fighting for it. Not with weapons this time, but with words, with diplomacy, with the same stubborn determination that had won the battle, because that was what humans did. They fought for what they believed in. They adapted to any challenge. And they never, ever gave up. The galaxy had learned that lesson well, and it would not forget